Call to order the Board of Education Committee of the whole meeting on Tuesday, November 28th. The Board of Education makes available at least one current copy of the Open Meetings Act, which is posted on the west wall of the meeting room and accessible to members of the public. Do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
I move that the Board of Education of District Number 15 approve the agenda as presented.
Second?
Second.
Your votes, please.
Aye.
Oh, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Opposed? Maybe I'll
Those
just vote.
opposed? No, I'm
Janet's not here, somebody else has got a reason.
I know. I guess first thing we're gonna talk about is cheer competition information, and Mrs. Dean is gonna do that.
Yes.
Will you
Come
come up
on.
here and
Yep.
sit right there?
As they're coming up, there's requests that come along sometimes, and we've talked about them in the past. And sometimes those requests come with answer or questions from the board. And so I just asked Mrs. Dean and Mrs. Blackburn to come to answer, to explain these things, because a lot of times those questions, they'll have better answers than I will. So I appreciate you guys being willing to come tonight, kind of explain what this is all about and be able to take questions. So thank you.
Okay, yeah. So we just want to go to a competition, on January 28th, if I remember right off the top of my head, yeah, it's a Sunday. JC and I sat down and looked at our schedule, and I have the list here, and I'll go through it in a second, just of available competitions that we would have to go to. And the reason why we want to go to an extra competition outside of our state competition is just to get the girls ready for the state competition, which is our big one, that we won last year. So, our state competition's at the end of February, and so we start competition practice November 2nd. We have a whole list of competitions that are available to us, and so I can just start going through some of them now. There's two that are October 28th and 29th, so those are before our practices have even started. There's one November 4th, which is 2 days after we start practice, so we'd only have one practice at that point. There's
Can you
one.
tell us the days of the week those are?
Yeah, those are, that, November 4th would be a Saturday, November 5th is a Sunday.
When you said January 28th, are you talking 24 or 25?
24, yeah, so like this coming January.
But now you're talking October dates. So
Yeah,
is
these
that
are like
October?
past dates,
Okay.
yeah, like these are ones we could have went to if we would have started early, sorry, I should have made more copies. Yeah, and so then there's another one that was on November 11th, that would have been a Saturday, but again, at that point, we only had 2 practices, so we're not gonna be prepared. Then there's there's a couple in December, this upcoming month, December 10th, which is a Sunday. There's one December 16th, which would be a Saturday, however, that's like our one free Saturday in the month of December that we would have that we're not cheering at the high school basketball games.
Who sponsors these? I mean, are these?
It's just high schools, different high schools, like that one is at Gretna High School, Waverly has one, Elkhorn has one, yeah, Miller North, UNO, a bunch of different high schools. And we have mats now that we would be able to host one in an upcoming year as well. And just kind of finishing January, there's one at Wymore that's on a Sunday. There's one on a Sunday that we also have snowball. There's one on a Saturday that we already attend, that's our conference one, that's January 20th of 2024. There's one on a Saturday in January, and that's January 13th, which show choir has their home competition at the high school. So we have a lot of girls that share girls between dance, between cheer, between show choir, and so pulling them from their show choir to go to a cheer competition seems really unfair for them to have to be in Beatrice and then drive to, where is he now at? Fremont.
But I'm
then
equally
come back.
hesitant to pull them from Sundays, because the minute we allow one group to attend an activity on Sunday, how can we tell the next group no?
I'm making it optional for them to do so. I posted it to the parents, and I haven't had any response about them having issue with it, because it's one Sunday out of our whole season.
But if it's one Sunday for the cheerleading team, then it's another Sunday for the dance team, then it's another Sunday for basketball, and it's another Sunday for, I will struggle with this one. I will struggle with it mightily because,
It's always been kind of an unwritten rule that we avoid. I mean, it's just, we've never done anything on Sundays, I shouldn't say never, but it's
Right.
frowned upon it, and we would honor the Wednesday obligations for a lot of our kids so that they could participate in, there's, church activities, so.
but next year, couldn't you start earlier so you can do one of those in October or whenever?
But we also split girls with volleyball, and we split girls with cross-country and softball, and I don't want to make them choose.
But I appreciate that, but we're gonna hear, you're giving us the exact same arguments we're gonna hear from the band, the music,
And I'm not
once we open up Sunday, it will be gone.
I'm not necessarily even talking about those groups. We hear a lot of comments from the general community about, those days of the week being, should be reserved for those kinds of activities, so that kids don't have to make a choice between their, church activities and their school activities. So, I get a lot of pushback from the community, but
Just at this point, looking at the way the competitions have fallen this year, we would have no other opportunity besides for December 16th, which is,
that's before finals, is it not?
yeah, right, the weekend before finals. It's the only Saturday we personally have free in that entire month, besides for like the 23rd. That we're not at school doing a basketball thing, that we're not with the cheerleaders doing something else. Like, we're always doing something. Saturday, we have basketball games all day, and then we are going to the lighted parade. Like, we're always doing something. That's like my one free Saturday of that month. And in January, we're with the cheerleaders pretty much every Friday or Saturday, every day we see them for practices or games or wrestling meets. And I understand this Sunday argument. I like my Sundays too. And I wouldn't be fighting for this if I didn't think it was what's best for my team to do well at state. Because I like to be with my family on Sunday too.
So how many opportunities are there on Sundays? Are other schools not honor the?
Other schools, no.
No.
They don't?
When I coached at Lincoln East, it was optional, as I worded it to my parents too. I said, I understand Sunday is usually for religious purposes and for family. I honor that. If you choose not to attend, your daughter or son, if there's a male, is not gonna be punished for that. Because I
Sunday in the
understand
morning
it.
or afternoon?
There's one that is in the afternoon. I'm not sure if the time's on the Midland cheer, but I believe it's in the afternoon. The Millard West. When I did it previously with East, it was in the afternoon. But they don't have any times on here listed. And I haven't registered yet because I was waiting for a decision about it. So,
Do you truly believe when you offered that as an optional, did you have anybody opt out?
I did.
And you were okay with that?
I totally understand it. In my house, when I was growing up, Sunday morning was always that. I never worked, I never did anything, so I totally understand them wanting to. And like I said, if you don't think JC and I want a free day out of our week, like, we would love to have a Sunday off where we're not at school, we're not with the cheerleaders, and we love them so much, don't get me wrong, but Sundays is my one day, and I'm taking 2 grad classes, and I have stuff that I do too, and so like I said, I wouldn't be fighting for this, I wouldn't be here if I didn't feel like this is my best opportunity for my team, our team to do well.
We see the benefits in this.
Yeah.
We saw it last year, we got so much feedback, we see the benefits, otherwise we would not waste.
So you
A
did it
day.
last year?
We didn't do a Sunday
Saturday.
last year.
But you did it different, another.
Correct.
So why didn't you do that this year?
They offered it in November instead of January.
Would
That's
there ever be a time when you could do it in November, or is it just the way?
November, the way that we split girls, there's never gonna be a way that we could be ready in November. So. We thought about doing a December one last year, but it was that same weekend before finals where its families go out of town for Christmas, and I hate pulling them from that too. So it kind of feels like there's no winning with that either, and from finals. they got other stuff to do too.
Any other questions? Is this, how do we vote on this, or what,
Well, not a committee of the whole meeting, we have to wait
Okay.
until the December board meeting.
So as it is there a policy that we don't have things on Sunday, or is it just practice?
It's just kind of been an unwritten.
if we open that door,
Understanding.
there will be.
Yeah, but how many other activities do anything on Sunday?
And I think cheers.
No sports or anything do it.
But if you open the door, there will be, there will be.
I don't think there will be, in my opinion.
And I guess, in my opinion, if you're making it optional and you need this, you feel like you need this for state, I mean, yes, I don't.
And I think what schools run to why they have to host it on Sunday. I remember Bennington High School's coach posting about this on the Facebook page. There's no gym space. When are we supposed to have a cheer competition if basketball's in the gym? Or, I mean, wrestling, or whatever it may be. And so I understand those get put, and then cheer is the last thing, but then that leaves Sunday. So,
I think it's officially what I like to refer to as a conundrum. I mean, it really is, it's a situation where I get it, I get the church thing, and I think and I appreciate you expressing that as well as a concern of your own, and I think we all do. But I think at the end of the day, we have to also ask ourselves, with this conundrum, what makes the most sense for the kids that are involved and put the time in and the effort in, and if it's optional, and parents, and they know it's optional, which it sounds like we have to ask ourselves what's the most logical thing to do to reward the time and energy and effort that the kids put. But ultimately, it comes down to, it's not an easy thing, so.
And even though you say it's optional,
Mhm.
there's always pressure,
Right.
so it's not, there's pressure to, yeah, either way.
I think Sunday afternoon would be tolerable, Sunday morning, no. I mean, I think if they wanna have if you could get there and not have to leave till,
Where did you say this is at?
this one is at Miller North.
at what time does it start?
I don't know yet, because I haven't been able to register, because I've had to wait for approval. So. But there is one that same Sunday in the afternoon. It says noon start, so we could do that one as well.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thank you.
thanks for being here.
Now we're gonna have a data they'll like, I believe.
We have talked at length about how to talk about, how to make this an interesting topic for everyone. It seems to come up from time to time in our community, test scores do. And so ultimately, in an effort to update you as the Board of Education on state testing and student progress, it also helps us determine if strategy 4 and 5 are working and looking at the different data points. So we've asked our administrative team to come and be part of this, but we also want to respect your time this evening, so we're going to try and go fast and cover a lot of ground as Dr. Nielsen's pulling this up. But we are talking about test scores now, and I think Dr. Nielsen at the last board meeting talked to you about how there's a timeline that's involved here, that we can only talk about this after they get released. Otherwise, prior to that, it's embargoed data. The state calls it embargoed data. So now that this embargoed data has been released publicly, we can talk to you and present to you about it. We're excited to talk about it because there's some really good things that came from our test scores this year. and so we're excited to share those, but we're gonna kind of tag team, so I'll let you go.
Perfect, so as we look at these pieces, again, this is our kind of check to see where we are with the state standards, how are we meeting strategy 4, strategy 5, where you're looking at our systems that we're putting in place and instructional practices, are we doing what we need to be doing to move forward? So you have in front of you a little packet of information. I will be referencing this packet of information as we go through this. So the first one that we talked about is, when are we going to present this information? Today we're talking about it here, but then November 30th and December 18th, you see a fun little flyer. I shared it again on Facebook. I have asked additional people to continue to share this information out there, but we are doing something different and kind of having a public session. So on Thursday, we will have donuts and coffee, hopefully enticing people to come listen to us talk about data. And then December 18th, we will have cookies and coffee, and that will be right before, I know. Where are the donuts tonight? Is that what your question is? December 18th, we'll have something right before the instrumental and vocal music session, so that will be out at the high school. So we're just trying to do different things just to see if we can get people there to share what we are doing. And then throughout the rest of the second semester, we'll continue talking about the different things that we do. So as you look at our system is, the state uses a system called AQuest, and that is the accountability system, accountability for a quality education system today and tomorrow. There are 3 domains that they look at. So they have the leadership domain, they have success, access, and support domain, teaching, learning, and serving domain. All of these go into, there's a packet of information that looks like this. All of these go into helping create what this is. So, AQuest, there's the 6 tenets of AQuest, the teaching, learning, and serving, and then success, access, and support. And remember, leadership domain was the other one too, and that's kind of in all of those. So as you look at that packet of information, I'm not going to go through everything. This is for you to look at, this is for you to see, this is for you to explore. And we are going to touch on some of those key pieces here. But you will see in this document that we have classification, designations. Designations are not out at this point in time, so those have not been made public. And then you will have status indicator, which is our proficiency rate, and so on. On the very last page, the really nice thing is that there's a legend, and it tells you exactly what each is about. But there's some really good data in here. There's also some data that we know that as we look at it, we have to continue to grow from. And so there are some key pieces that as we go through this, when we talk about our positives, I will look and point those out to you. So, what are some of our achievements? So as you look at this data, as you look at the other pieces, currently we have 3 schools that are classified as great. Beatrice Public Schools are our district, and then Beatrice Middle School and Lincoln Elementary. Now Lincoln Elementary uses the district's data. So whatever the district is, Lincoln Elementary is also, because they do not have any grades that are tested. Because they're K2, no one takes the state assessment, so they utilize our data. So that's why they still are great, but that is why, if you have that question in your mind, why are they identified as great? That's why. Chronic absenteeism. This was a fun piece to see. So we saw an approximately a 4% decline in absenteeism. That's 4% of our students that were absentee the year before are no longer reaching that mark. That's 17.7 days being gone. So they are no longer reaching that mark. So that is fun to see. And BMS, Beatrice Middle School, saw the largest decline at 5%. So again, if you go on here, you'll be able to see there's that column called chronic absenteeism. You'll be able to see where the schools were. And what's interesting is see where we started in 2016 to where we are now. And those are questions, those are conversations that our teachers are having. When we shared this at our Meet Your Cousins PLC, it was awesome to watch teachers talk about why. Why is that so high? Why is there such a huge jump from middle school to high school? What do we need to do differently? And so just brainstorming, it was really a lot of fun to just watch them continue to problem solve and think about how they can impact kids at a higher level. Graduation rate, the 7-year graduation rate is over 90% at 91.78%. So this would include our 21-year-olds that are graduating that have finished out high school, because that's how long they're on that path. They are served until they are 21 years old. This would also take that child that just needed that extra semester. Or maybe an EL student that came in with very few credits and maybe had EL classes at a different school, but we do not take those because those are not an English 9 or a math class. They might be an EL class. So they need to then, they're behind when they enroll in our school. So there are situations where that 7-year graduation rate really shows that we don't give up on kids. We continue to help them reach that goal. The non-proficiency rate. This is another area that was really a lot of fun to see, because you want the non-proficiency rate to be a low number. So as you can see, the district on the front page is 44.81. That means 44.81% of our students were not proficient. Notice the year before that was 56.17. Look at the decline. That's huge. So we saw the district saw approximately 12% of the students moving to the proficiency side. Beatrice Middle School saw approximately 18% moving to that proficiency side. Stoddard Elementary saw 10%. Paddock Lane saw 8% moving towards that proficiency rate. So towards that being proficient. And then designations, we aren't going to talk about that. I can't share the news, but it's good news, just FYI. If you
Go
read
back
it.
to that slide for a second.
Okay, don't read too closely, don't publish it.
Be-
Yeah.
Before we move, are there questions about these achievements? And I think the important thing is the classifications, the chronic absenteeism, the graduation, the non-proficiency, and the designation, those are all measuring sticks and help us determine, you know, in relationship to student success, each one of those things has an impact.
I'm a bit baffled how we can Beatrice Public Schools can get a grade classification, but the majority of our schools do not get that classification.
It is really based upon that status score. So for example, we are right over the benchmark. So we have, our status indicator is we have 55.19% of our students proficient. I think we had to be at 54%. So we are right over. I will tell you, when I looked at the other schools, like the high school, 51.47, they may have had to have been at 55%. They are very close. They are very close. They're at that's the thing, is all schools are at that top. They're just right below that. So they are good high, so to speak. They're on that higher side of good. So that is, yeah, that is why. Yep, the district was a lower mark, the schools were higher. I thought it was kind of interesting. Don't know why you wouldn't just go across the board. It's all the same, but yeah, yep. Perfect, good question.
All right,
Okay,
we'll jump into the data. Andrew.
Yes.
Dr. Nielsen asked me to give a different voice for all of you, so you didn't have to listen to her, but she covered like everything I wanted to talk about. But I would reiterate some things with her. We saw pre-COVID chronic absenteeism rates across our district were significantly lower. The middle school, we were at 12 and 13%. You went into the COVID era, if you will, they got up to 25% for our school, and the 30s high school, and elementaries even got up in the 20s, which is pretty unheard of. So we've, as administrative team, teachers, how do we get our students in the chairs more often? What kind of approaches and things can we put in place to get them in front of our teachers? And so that's good to see our chronic absenteeism rates drop. And I think naturally you're going to see some of our achievement scores increase. So looking at ELA here, we're pretty well 50% in terms of proficiency rate across the board. In terms of a cohort, so if you look at, last year's third graders, this year's fourth graders, fourth to fifth, et cetera, and so on, they're about plus or minus a 10% gain from the previous year. So, which is a pretty significant increase in a year, and it's good to see in the ELA realm. So, going to go forward to the next one. Looking at free and reduce, not going to dive too deep into this, but the thing I'd like to point out is it's pretty similarly aligned to the entire cohort. So there are some of them that are a little lower, but it's not a drastic. The full cohort, then your free and reduced lunch subgroup is drastically lower, which is good to see. Moving into special education, this is one that we've looked at. These are our students that we've identified that have a disability, possibly in language arts, written expression, reading, or math. We'll get to math, but so there are some known factors in terms of knowing these are some of our struggling learners, but this is one thing we put in the strategic plan as an area of growth. Looking at K-12, implementing some processes to see some further improvement within our special education subgroup. Go to math. Math, there's some pretty significant jumps in there. We're in the 40s in the elementary, in the middle school. I can talk more specifically into that. 65, 79, 73, really high. I would say in our middle school, our math teachers, I laugh because they complain to me when we have to do testing because they want that instructional day in their classroom. They want me to craft a schedule so they can still have, even if it's a 30-minute class with their kids, because they know we've got to get through all these standards, and their work right there is shown. So they've squeezed a ton out of those kids in the last year. I think a big part in the middle school side was the ICU. You can call it homework, you can call it practice, but if we're getting quality assignments in front of kids and we're holding them accountable to do those, I think you see that. So math did a tremendous job, going to free and reduce as well. Some of those tendencies are still there. Fast forward to special education. This one I found really interesting. We had one of our groups, special education groups, in 50% proficient within a hard test, in special education. So obviously still some groups in there that are real similar to ELA. Known that's a area of growth that we've identified as a district that we want to look at. I think that's strategy 5 of Lumen's strategic plan. Science is one of those that has historically been high for us, which is good. This is only administered in 5th and 8th grade, so it's hard to go from cohort to cohort. But last year, or excuse me, I wrote that down somewhere. We did see an increase as far as 8th grade from the previous year, up to 72%. I'm not exactly sure the resources the elementary use, but in 8th grade, our series that we use is pretty rigorous. It's difficult, but I would also say that helps elevate our students and their performance on this test. They're prepared for it. Free and reduced, I don't have a whole lot to mention on that. And special education is one of our higher groups in terms of proficiency rates in comparison to ELA and math. So obviously that's a vast addition. I think I'm following what I was told to do and keeping it short and simple, but if you have any questions, I can answer those as best as I can, or one of these guys back there can.
And the interesting thing about the science test is it is very much so a reading and thinking test. I mean, because it is, you have a puzzle in front of you that you have to solve. And so that's why I will tell you the curriculum, the resource that we utilize at the middle school, and we've added a lot more kind of project-based pieces at the elementary as well. It's huge because our kids have to be able to solve. It is a domain, or the depth of knowledge level 3 or 4 is what you're getting. It's a task that they have to read through, figure out kind of why are these bubbles here? I mean, remember back to one example that they always gave was, there's a frozen pond and there's bubbles there, and why are the bubbles here? Why are the bubbles not here? And it's like, okay, well, I don't know. But it's that reasoning that the students have to be able to do, and it is a huge test that is very interesting, and I love the fact that our special ed students do very well on that science test, because I'm like, that is awesome. So there is something about that test that they're truly connecting with. Yes, I still want to see those numbers, those gaps continue to close, but there's something that they are connecting with and that they are gaining and learning and getting. So that's something to explore even more. Okay, now we're on to ACT. Unless we have any other questions about 3 through 8.
So I drew the straw to talk about ACT proficiency, which a few weeks ago, and I'm not sure how the Omaha World Herald got the information on where schools rank, but you probably, if you watch the Omaha World Herald, you saw that article come out. And a lot of times, that ACT ranking compares schools to each other, which is a dangerous thing to start doing. And I could spend an hour talking about why comparing schools from one to the other is a dangerous thing to do, because schools are so much different from one community to the next. And I will not spend an hour explaining why that is the case, but the ACT seems to be one of those things that is kind of it's kind of a comparison tool that's used by a lot of places. So much so that the Omaha World Herald used it. In talking about the proficiency here at Beatrice Public Schools on the ACT, and looking at cohort 2024, just some key highlights. And you can see down along the bottom of the graph, it's broken out into math, English language arts, and science is how the ACT is scored. Beatrice scored at a 44% proficiency. The state average was 42% in math. So we were above the state average of proficiency in math. In English language arts, the next category, Beatrice was at 58% proficiency. The state average was 46% proficiency. Science, Beatrice was 53% proficiency. The state average, 49% proficiency. So the theme there, the key highlight is, in all three categories that the ACT scored on, Beatrice was above the state average in proficiency levels. Looking at our subgroups, and basically in Beatrice we have two subgroups. We have free and reduced lunch, and we have special education subgroups. We don't have enough numbers in other categories to create subgroups, so those are the two that the state uses for our subgroup comparisons. That's why Andrew was talking about that before with the proficiency levels in the test. So when we look at the free and reduced proficiency level, we continue to free and reduced lunch continues to improve in ACT testing, as you can see by the graph. ELA and math both saw an increase in proficiency. Science was down a little bit in proficiency this year, so we know that that's a target area for us for next year. In terms of special education, again, you've heard us talk about this. The thing about special education that I want everyone to know, including our listeners at home, our district last year was at 25% special education rate. That means 1 in 4 of our students walking in the hall had some special education need that our district is providing for them. So, but it's really hard to analyze these graphs, and it's really hard to talk about SPED because the size of our population, and again, if you start comparing it to other schools, the size of our population of SPED students is so much greater than the state average. We're almost 30% special education rate right now. The state average is about 14 to 15. So our school, Beatrice Public Schools, is almost double the state average of special education students. There's such a diversity of needs amongst the population of special education students. It could range from someone just being a little bit developmentally delayed, all the way up to a category where the student is, that we're trying to have take this test, is delayed in reading, math, English language arts, all the way across the board. And so there's just such a wide diversity of the population, or the needs of the population of SPED students, so we have to keep that in mind. And then finally, the rigor of the test is not designed to identify the strengths and weaknesses of students with special needs. That's why we also use the MAP test, the Measure of Academic Progress test, is because it's more geared, the rigor isn't so great that it just automatically becomes too much of a challenge. It helps us measure student progress in the special education realm better than the NSCAS test does. So,
Jason, is the very first slide you showed, that's including everybody, right?
That includes
And now
everyone.
you're just,
yep,
so that does include free and reduced special ed,
yep,
This
and
does,
then, and then
yep,
you're just breaking it out, okay.
yeah,
yep.
Yep.
Then we're just breaking it out. So, we readily understand this is an area, this is a subgroup area where we need to continue to try and close that gap between non-proficiency and proficiency. Obviously, we want to see that green grow is what we're looking for. So that's why we look at our target areas, and then we try and make decisions using this data that reflects making that green grow or more proficiency grow.
any questions about the ACT?
Can I just add something?
Yes,
One of the things with ACT also is, so if a student has maybe 6, 7, 8 accommodations in their IEP that helps them in class every day that they use for, their everyday assignments and tests and quizzes, ACT doesn't allow the majority of those. So the majority of the accommodations that students get on an everyday basis to help them be more successful, to help meet their needs, typically we don't get to utilize those on the ACT, so that does have a big impact also on their scores.
That's a great point.
most of the time the accommodations are extended time, so they get a little bit of extra time to take the test, but it still is, it's not as long as they want. It is maybe time and a half. So they get, if it's a 40-minute test, they get 20 extra minutes added onto it. Extended time, they can have a computer when they type up the essay. But, if you do the test online, you can have that too. There are a text-to-speech, but again, that text-to-speech is, they aren't going to read you everything. So they're going to read you very little, but they're gonna get you into the test, and then you have to navigate it yourself. So there are very few accommodations that our special education students receive with the ACT. Yes, that's a huge piece. Okay.
You
So,
believe they'll continue to utilize the ACT in high school as a state test? Is it, we're about year 3 or 4 into it, or has it been longer than that?
It's been since 2016, 17. Yeah, and that is a legislative mandate, so that would have to come from
Sure, I
the legislature, and they
well, it's
have to-
interesting because a lot of, the colleges aren't even utilizing it as entrance anymore.
Yeah,
It's, the frustrating thing is the political involvement that comes along with it. And that's exactly what we're seeing in this scenario, is that politics drives so much of the decision to use that. And honestly, you're exactly right. Colleges don't even use the ACT as an entrance. It used to be an entrance requirement, and now it's not.
It's
So the next level of learning institutions have said, the ACT really isn't. Because if the ACT was a true measure of someone's success, there'd be a lot of people that wouldn't be considered successful now because of their ACT score that are tremendously successful now. So again, that's a danger that happens with a lot of people that want to use these as comparison tools. There are plenty of people who did not do well on the ACT that have gone on to be very successful.
Do neighboring states utilize it?
Some do, some don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What I'm wondering about the ACT is that on an individual basis, you can't tell. But perhaps on more corporate basis, you get a larger contingent, then the average may still be a more accurate indicator of proficiency.
Yeah.
So it may work as a body, but you can't look at any one individual and say, hey, that score means you're that smart or that accomplished.
Right,
Mhm.
exactly.
Yes. Okay, so, and wrapping this up, kind of, where do we need to go from here? So what are some of the areas of growth that we've looked at? So I think our goal is to move all schools to great. We want to continue to move them up. We are close in all the schools, so how do we get them over that mark? Chronic absenteeism, I would like every school to be below 20%. And I would like to get back to where we're hitting that 15% mark, but let's take little steps. So every school to be below 20%. Graduation rate, four-year graduation rate is at 87.32. I'd like that to be at 90. I'd like that to be at 90% or above. And so those are the things, how do we continue to catch those students that come in that may be a junior with no credits? And that's the thing is, we do have kiddos that show up, senior, no credits. So we have to figure it out. And they are our student. They may leave the next day, but because they've enrolled with us, they're now on our docket. So the other part that I really, and I know Mrs. Morris would have this information for me, is the students that start with us, how many of them finish on time with us? Because I think that's the other piece that, as I'm sitting here thinking, I'm like, you know what, that would be a great
I
statistic
think
to
we
say.
tracked that in, haven't we presented that?
I think-
Mr. Suter did.
He may have,
Yeah.
yeah. It's been a while though that I've seen it, so it would be nice to bring that number back to say, and this is the number of kids that if we have them with us all 4 years, this is how successful they are.
Just for information's sake on that, because I looked at it today, I think we had 21 students leave the middle school and 30 come in. So, I mean, there's probably a fair number to that point that are coming and going.
Yes. Non-proficiency, to continue to decrease and move the kids to proficiency. So this is where we really focus on that strategy 4 and 5 of what are we doing, what are our instructional practices, what are our systems in place to help students that are where the gaps are. And then designation to continue making increases in closing, so we do not have a designation. The designation basically says your targeted support and improvement. So you need improvement in special education. You need improvement in free and reduced lunch. You need improvement in your Hispanic population, which is usually your English learner students. So that's what I would like to not see those designations ever pop up again. Yes.
One area that I'm curious about is that chronic absenteeism, of
Mhm.
how it can be so high. How can kids make it through? What, is there illness that's causing it? Just not showing up?
It's a blend of that.
Yes.
I think you've got, I think COVID played more of an impact on your health-related absences that were maybe tied to symptomatic, symptoms that might be related to COVID and that sort of thing. We're starting to see some distance from that, not seeing that as much, but there's just some true truancy. And we've set up processes to, like our student information system, that will flag us when students are getting into that. The state views truancy different than they view this as chronic absenteeism. Truancy law is 20, this is 17 or 10% of an enrollment. So, but we've set some things up in our Infinite Campus that'll flag us when students are on a trajectory to get into chronic absenteeism territory, try to get in front of it. Sometimes it's easier than others, but it's, if we can get students in the chairs in front of our teachers, we're gonna see some natural success. So to answer your question, there's a variety of reasons. We're seeing the health reasons start to come down, but there's still a fair amount of just true truancy.
Andrew, I think it's important too, that the board, I'm sure already knows, but
as administrators, every single level, we go to houses. We go and knock on doors when they're gone 2 or 3 days in a row. We start calling. If they're not answering, we call Officer Nesbitt, Officer Klaus, Officer Zach, I call him Zach, Officer Zach, and we go and knock on doors, or we take another teacher with us to find out what's going on, because they need to be at school. Whether it be lack of transportation, or whether it be just wanting to sleep in, or illness, we need to know, because we know they're best fit at school. So as administrators, I know Missy and I've gone to multiple apartments together. I know Andrew and Nesbitt and Craig do. I know high school does. I know Betty does. We're always knocking on doors, because if they're gone 2 days in a row and we don't know, we worry about those kids. We want to know where they're at and what's going on. And if they have a great reason, great. But if they don't, hop in the van. We'll take you to school today. You know, we'll get you breakfast. We'll go to school and we'll get you home. So I think, you know, we're trying as an admin team, as a school, to make sure we're on top of that. But as Andrew said, there's a lot of excuses out there from our patrons and our parents, but we're doing our best to try to get them there, because we know they're best served when they're at school.
Any other questions? Anything else from the administrative team?
At another time, I'd like to explore the absenteeism further, but not to take time tonight. I am interested
Absolutely.
in better understanding.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. Now I think Mr. Hakey and Mr. Stengel are going to talk about the middle school schedule.
As they get started, again, this is an example of bringing the folks who are trying to think outside of the box to solve and make improvements in those areas we just showed you. Some of the thinking that they've put into looking at next year and how to make more gains than we made this year, because we did see significant gains this year. That information we just showed you is, in my opinion, tremendously exciting for our district. And it's because of thinking that's happening with all of our administrative team on how to address those issues and create more proficiency levels. And so, as we look at hiring for next year, we are, number one, we know we're in a teacher shortage, so we're trying to make sure we have teachers. And number two, we're trying to think outside of the box on how to utilize the staff and the teachers that we have. And then how, with retirements that are happening, how we can change things up a little bit. And so that's why they're here tonight, talking about the middle school schedule and be able to answer questions.
My goal is not to get too far into the weeds, but if you have questions, we feel like we've spent hours and hours and hours upon looking at this for a variety of different reasons. So it's more of a management thing, but it does come with its proposals to Jason and Jackie, and also I think it's important for the Board of Education to have an understanding of where those come from. So we spent a lot of time early this fall. Normally we do scheduling in February, March, April. We did that early this year because of some of the known retirements that we're going to have. Some of those resignations, retirement letters we have in hand. Some of them we anticipate pretty strongly that are verbal at this point, that we expect here in the next, honestly, weeks for those that come through as they tie up their retirement meetings and so forth, and plan for their own personal future. So that has helped us out tremendously in preparing for the future. So we've looked at this schedule. We've asked our staff in previous years, actually each year, to see, you know, what are some priorities you'd like to see in our schedule that would be adjusted. And so some of the things that we've crafted into the schedule as highlights to bring forth to talk about is one of those would be reading and PE every day. Right now, those are semester courses that are tied together. One of the problems is in that is that we may have a student that has sixth grade reading in the fall, and maybe not reading again until they're a seventh grader in the spring, just based on how the scheduling takes place. And so, in order to do this, what we have put together is, right now we're on a 7-period day. We would look to expand it to an 8-period day. The reason that's important is, if you look at a schedule, right now, our core teachers, for example, science and social studies have four teachers. They teach 5 sections a day for a total of 20 sections available for our students. English, language arts, and math have 5 teachers, so they have more sections available. We widen that out to 8 periods. There's 4 more sections available for our students in effort to keep class sizes down. The reason that's important is based on the schedule, we would look with our retirements of repurposing a English language arts teacher into a reading and a math teacher into a PE role. Because in order for us to have a full year reading class and a full year PE class, we've got to have the teachers to be able to facilitate that. The other part of that is that I've talked with Jason and Jackie is looking at, right now we're in an enrollment trend that's on a downside. We've got 2 classes right now that are about 135, 140. We've ran the projections looking at our enrollment with Beatrice and our parochials, and that's always give or take. But those are trending back upwards into more of our norms of a class of 150 to 165. In the following years, next year it'll get to about 460, and that's where we're at about 3 years ago when we had 1 more FTE for this. Next year, we got close to teachers with initial social studies. So we had talked about special education. We've talked about seeing up here with language arts and reading as an assessed area for as far as INSCAS. So based on that schedule, we feel we can accomplish some priorities of reading full year, also with PE that's good for kids. We could put it into a core team plan-ish where our core teachers, our 6th grade core teachers are planning together. We haven't been able to accomplish that for quite a number of years. We would get band out of study hall, and that would allow Mr. Thompson some transition time into, so our kids aren't picking study hall, I can't get behind on my academics as a band, but it also give him some time at the end of the day to transition to the elementary, to get band in while they're still in session, at least start it while their kids are still there. Right now, like today, they're at the middle school. And we have to bus them over, parents and so forth. So that would be an added bonus. We would create an intervention period with the schedule. But the one thing that I've proposed with these 2 is, in order to fit all these pieces together, there is one ask that I'm gonna make with them, and that is gonna help us with our reading and math classes of keeping our class sizes down, number 1, but 2, our caseloads for special education are pretty high. Right now we were unable to find a special education teacher for this year, and so we were able to rehire Debbie Tim for a year to do paperwork. We have one of our resource teachers that has, if not 40, 39, Beth might be able to do 38, okay, on her caseload. So that's a lot to shoulder for one individual. The other ones next year are going to be, I believe 8th grade will be 20, and 5th grade coming into 6th grade will be 25. So looking at those numbers and the needs of those, our most struggling learners that we went through the data, our proposal would be to add a special education teacher to help us support the needs of those students. In terms of interesting turn events, so to speak, this year, early in the year, we've had a couple individuals that have requested, have personally contacted me at the middle school that are from Beatrice, would like to move back to Beatrice, that have middle school special education experience. And so there's some pieces that I'd like to, move on, knowing this schedule may have some ripple effects in the personnel and the hiring with the elementary. So depending on who is interested in our openings that will come up, we would like to get this solidified soon, so that way if there's a or if there's an elementary or high school vacancy, they have time to prepare for that. If we're gonna hire internally. So that's not too much into the weeds, but that's a lot. I threw a lot there. So if you have questions.
I think we just we wanted you to have the opportunity to hear what's going on. So if you have questions, you could ask them. But, yeah, I think essentially the key factor is, I think at the beginning when Andrew said typically this process doesn't start until January, February, March, usually typically February, March. It's happening earlier because it is so hard to find teachers in key areas right now. And we've tasked the principals with getting on things earlier this year so we can fill those spots that we know we're gonna have resignations in.
And kudos to some of our retired teachers that have been in this district for 30-plus
Yeah.
years that have given us the ability to do that with their, either retirement letter or their commitment to, here's what I'm planning, so we can look at this adjustment and figure out how we can solve for the future, because 3 of those are likely gonna be math, and that's a tall task of hiring 3 math teachers in a year. So I think we've got some plans in place. We just wanted to make sure you're looped into the conversation, these guys are. If we can move forward, the sooner the better. So that way the high school and the elementary can, if there's any ripples there, that they can forward think as well.
I think the all-year reading and PE are excellent, too.
Agree.
And I would say outwardly, the additional member that we're requesting, as far as special education, will tremendously help, specifically the reading portion, in being able to teach some of those classes to make sure those class sizes are in the ballpark of where our language arts, math, science, and social studies are.
Again, not something that necessarily we're saying you have to approve. We just want to keep you updated as to how things are unfolding. Because in the next few weeks, and as Andrew indicated, there's going to be a lot of, for lack of a better statement, there's going to be a lot of dominoes that start to fall, and they come with a ripple effect. So resignation comes in, or a retirement letter comes in, elementary teacher says, hey, I'm interested in that position at the middle school, elementary teacher moves up, now we're replacing an elementary teacher. There's gonna be a lot of those scenarios that start to happen. Could be middle school to high school, could be preschool to elementary school, but there's gonna be a lot of those shifting, because we have internal candidates that are interested in a change in their career for whatever reason. They want to do something different, which is okay. So as those start to happen, we just wanted to let you know, on the basis of this, and the middle school's kind of been the key cog in the wheel right now, or the key spoke in the wheel, as that these things start to unfold, there's just gonna be ripple effects, and we're gonna try and fill those positions as quickly as possible.
I want to thank the middle school administration for being proactive in their efforts, you know. It's easy just to sit and complain, but they're doing something to actually make it better for kids, so thank you.
And I just hope that the public and the students too appreciate all that goes into this.
Middle school students will never tell us.
That's why we're doing it.
I still have a granddaughter that has issues.
Okay.
I said, good.
We off the hot seat?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Mr. Alexander's moving into the hot seat.
Yep, and I'm gonna try and be as brief as possible, but again, wanting to keep you in the loop and prepare you a little bit for what's coming in the future. First of all, the furniture bid, as you know, from the timeline we submitted to you, and that goes all the way back to October, which seems like a long time ago, but it wasn't. We submitted an RFP for FF&E, that's a lot of abbreviations, furniture, fixtures, and equipment, in early November, so we posted that RFP, and we wanted to update you on where the process is right now. So on October 2nd, the RFP was posted. The bid deadline was Wednesday, October 25th. We had 2 vendors call and say, can you guys extend that deadline so we have a little more time? Okay, so we did that. We received 2 responses back on the RFP, one from School Specialty, one from Shepherd's Business Interiors. So what we've been doing since those RFPs came back, is we've been going through them line item by line item and seeing how they measure up and what the costs are. And we've had questions now about, within those line items, about some of the products that they said they could provide. So we've been working with both of those companies in the past few weeks, trying to get those questions answered. And basically, we think we'll be coming to an end of that in the next week, and we'll be ready to make a recommendation to you at the board meeting of which company to go with on the basis of what we've found out. So at the December board meeting, basically what we're going to be asking you to do is authorize myself and the committee of people that are involved with this, which is basically Dr. Nielsen, the principals, and Beth as sped coordinator, that have been going through all the furniture requests, to be able to work with a given company up to $1 million worth of FF&E. Now, how do we pay for that? Well, our capital campaign right now is at approximately $350,000. So we're starting to gain ground now there. We've had some successful donations come in. We're hoping to generate that $1.3 million. That's our target goal, is that $1.3 million. To cover the FF&E prior to the end of February. So we're asking you to authorize us up to $1 million to be able to do that, and understanding that a portion of the furniture will need to be paid up front. So we'll have to, when we work with the vendor that's selected, we'll have to pay a portion of that up front, and then the rest of it won't be required to be paid until the delivery date and the furniture's in place at the elementary school. So I hope that all makes sense. Questions?
That makes sense. I'm just curious, how do you assure quality?
Well, that's a great question. A lot of these products come with 3, 5-year, or lifetime warranties, depending on what the product is. And then with each item, which is what has been so time consuming, and Danielle's done an awesome job of sorting through things. For instance, you can look at a chair, and a chair will have, one chair will have 3 different levels at what level of quality it comes in at. Obviously, it's a lot like buying anything else. You get what you pay for. And so they may have an A grade, a B grade, and a C grade, and we're trying to make determinations on that quality, what's best for that particular product. And some products have that selection, and some products don't. So the best way that we can ensure quality, obviously, is to make sure that with each item that's ordered, we look at what the grade level is for that particular item.
But we've also went and saw them, and we've
Yes.
called, and we
Yes.
talked to other schools that maybe had a piece that we liked and said,
Yeah.
hey, is this worth it? And so then they said, yes, do this or don't do this. So I feel like the stuff that we've really liked, we've contacted people to see if it held up to kids, because we know kids treat everything perfectly all of the time. So, but we don't wanna buy stuff that we have to replace or that looks like we should have replaced it 2 years ago.
But we've also seen some actual examples.
Yeah.
Like, we've seen some good quality, or we've seen quality where we're like, we don't want this in the school.
We visited how many schools?
I've seen
Or
the,
five.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, we went to multiple.
I was gonna say, I've had experience at the university, and I know what works.
Much more than catalog shopping. We got our hands on it, we felt it, we're like, oh, this is not what we want. We've talked to other people, so I think we've done our due diligence of trying to find stuff that will work for kids and be usable for kids for a long time and not look old within a year.
Right, and I just wanna make sure that we don't go cheap. then.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and
We like to spend Jason's money. so.
Yes.
the other thing that I think is important is the timeline, and understand that in order to make sure the furniture's here, we have to place that order, and both of these companies have said, if we have it in our hands no later than February 1, and the one company would prefer to have it a little earlier, which I get, the earlier the better, then they can guarantee that all that product will be here unless something crazy happens in supply demand. So we're kind of up against a couple different things. We're up against ensuring quality. We're up against looking through all and making sure that we get all those questions answered we had from one company to the other. and then also up against the timeline. So, those are just some things. Good questions. That's all I have on furniture bid.
I was gonna say, you're up next with the superintendent update.
New elementary building update first, we'll transition into that, because I need to kind of tell you where we are, and then we need to talk a little bit about the calendar, because we're going to be recommending a calendar adjustment for this year to you on the basis now of where we are with the school construction. So the good news is that in speaking with Houseman Construction, the building is on schedule. That's great news, okay? It's on track to open when we want to open it in August next year. I don't want to jinx anything, so I'll knock on wood. We actually think we're a little bit ahead of schedule. But here's what I want to throw out is, an example is, there's a main electrical box that controls the fire panel that's been ordered and hasn't shown up yet. So it's something that simple that you expect to show up that may get delayed, that could then cause a delay on the back end of things, because in order to operate the fire alarms, you gotta have the fire panel, and you gotta have the electrical blocks to get the fire alarms to work. So, with all this said, the school's on schedule. Currently, the building exterior is 85 to 90% complete, and probably more so now. They might have wrapped that up this week, or in the last few days. The site paving outside is 75% complete. Level 2 framing and drywall is approximately 80% complete. Level 1 framing and drywall is approximately 55% complete. And again, remember, these are week-old numbers that I'm giving you right now. The MEP, the mechanical, electrical, and plumbing, is in progress, and approximately 50% of the rough end is complete throughout the entire building. So, massive progress has been made from where we were back in July. This means we need to start formalizing a myriad of planning details that we've been working on behind the scenes with the help of our administrators. But specifically in relationship to this conversation, the processes including the moving of staff, the moving of furniture, and all of the other necessities that will go, the furniture that we will be taking that will be going out to the building. Books, chairs, textbooks, all those things, supplies that will be going out to the new building. We have to have a plan in place that allows the appropriate time for teachers to be able to do that. So as we look at the end of the calendar year, this year, we need to talk about adjusting it a little bit. The calendar for 24-25, we will take you through that in January. We'll be bringing that to you probably at the January committee of the whole meeting. But specifically at the end of this year, 23-24 school year, we need to come up with, and we have a plan of how we need to allow enough time for teachers to pack up their rooms, to get all those things ready to go, and to have them ready so when it's time and we can move them into the new building, we can go to the old buildings, get the materials, put them in the new buildings. So what we're talking about is time to pack and organize. The end of the school year for the elementary staff, it makes the most sense for us simply to say that we're gonna dismiss the pre-K 5 on Friday, May 17th. And if we're gonna do that, we need to get that information out to parents as soon as possible. This essentially means we'll be giving teachers 2 to 4 days to pack their room, depending on whether we utilize snow days or not. We can't predict the weather. So if we don't use any snow days, it'll be 4. If we use snow days, it could be 3, it could be 2. But the rationale is this gives the appropriate time for teachers to get their rooms ready, to be packed up and moved out to the new school. It prevents having additional added extra expense to bring certified staff back to move. And finally, classified staff will be optional to help if they're available and if they want to. So that's kind of what our thoughts are. So in a nutshell, what we're saying to you is we need to give the teachers time to pack and be ready to go, PK through 5. And so our proposal would be, we just say, the easiest thing to do for everybody is say, school for those grade levels will end on Friday, May 7th. And then the next week, it'll either be 2 days or 4 days depending on the weather, which we don't know right now. So that's what we'll be bringing to you, asking for a schedule change at the end of the year.
And obviously that covers our hours and days and.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Cause you did tell me too that there's been schools that had to use that expense of paying teachers extra 3-4 days to do this exact same thing. So then that really then just adds on to the addition of the project as a whole.
Well, and, yeah, one of the schools we visited said it was the biggest challenge they had was getting teachers to come back after the end of the contract period to pack their rooms up. And, you know, when you look at the calendar and where it falls, then you're getting into close to the Memorial Day and so.
That's a sign of the times.
It is.
I do remember packing on my own because I was so glad that we got into high school. So I was happy to come on a Saturday and a Sunday too. I'm happy to put it. So anything else?
Nope, not on that topic, just superintendent update. I'll be very quick. Our 5-year school improvement visits are coming and scheduled for the month of February. Part of the visit is an interview with stakeholders and board members. So our team leads are working with administration with us right now to schedule those days, but we're gonna need some volunteers from the board to be part of those interviews and these Zoom meetings. Once we have those dates locked in, we'll ask for volunteers, but just remember, we can only have 3 at a time. So we'll have 2 different dates, we think, where those meetings will take place, and we'll be asking for you to go through some interviews with that external team visit that will be happening in February. Door access controls, we are in charge of that. That's not part of the GMP for the new school. It saves us 2.5% to be able to control it ourselves. And our ESU and tech staff felt like they could walk us through that. So that's been posted and it's due back December 18th. That's the controls for the badges on the doors at the new school. 2 opportunities for public presentation of the data. And Dr. Nielsen talked to you about that earlier. Just a reminder that that's coming up November 30th and December 18th, where we're asking the community to come in and we'll talk to them about the presentation that you saw tonight. December 5th is the ESU 5 superintendent's meeting, in which Senator Dorn and Senator Brandt will both be at, and we'll be talking. Board members have been invited to that. I've had 2 board members say that they will attend. And I will shoot those 2 board members information here in the next few days, but just a reminder that if there's anyone else that's interested in attending that, we can have up to 3. Okay, so I've got Chuck on there, and I think I've got Janet on there. If any of the rest of you are interested, let me know. I've already talked to you about the open positions in regard to retirement, so I'll skip over that, but I'll answer any questions if there are. I know that's good. I want to say a thank you to all of you for 2 reasons. First of all, thank you for allowing me to miss the first board meeting I've ever missed in 20 years to hold my grandson. That was an exceptional feeling, and because of your graciousness, that was able to take place. Second of all, thank you for your attention tonight. I know it's long, and I know there was a lot of information thrown at you, but appreciate you being interested in tracking and staying with us all. So, thank you very much.
It's easy to just stay awake when it's 58 degrees in
I
here.
know.
We did that on purpose.
That's what I assumed.
Turned off the dehumidifier.
I can tell that too, from my falling.
I don't believe we have anybody here that would want to address the board. I don't see
We could if you'd
anybody.
like
Not
it.
an employee.
And drag it out a little longer.
Yeah.
That leaves you.
Do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
I move that the Board of Education, District 15 adjourn.
Second,
I'll second.
all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? This meeting is adjourned.
Board meeting December